Everybody, we're so excited to have you and thank you so much as we get everything set up here. As you can see, this is Donna Fitzgerald. She'll do a great presentation for you. Her background, I think most of you know. She'll give you a little bit of her background. She's been in this market for a long time, was a 10-year lead PPM analyst for Gartner. We're so excited to have her here at Prosymmetry. And as we go through the session, feel free to ask questions in the little question box here in GoToMeeting, and we'll pick those up. And Donna will be able to answer those throughout the session or at the very end. We'll do that as well. And also at the very end, if anybody wants to stick around at the end of Donna's session, we'll have a little short demo presentation if anybody's interested of Tempus resource. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to you, Donna. We're excited to have you today.
Thank you very much, Greg, and thank you all for coming. Most of you know who I am, so we won't say anything except I'm going to be talking about the slope of enlightenment, which is part of the Gartner hype cycle. And clearly, I'm familiar with it because I spent 10 years at Gartner. So with that said, let's dive in.
And Donna, if you want, you can put on your screen cam. People like seeing it, unless you don't want
to. So now all I have to do is make sure that there are no technology things about getting my screen to work.
I can see, and your screen looks great. There you go. It went to the next screen.
So let's talk about the slope of enlightenment. Probably 18 years ago, Jackie Fenn came up with something called the hype cycle. It's widely used in all industries. Around 2017, Gartner, the PPM group, we did our first hype cycle. And Robert Handler and I were responsible for resource management. And we said, well, it's not on the slope of, excitement. It's not new. It is definitely in the trough of disillusionment because resource management has been around for a very long time. But we'll put it down there. We'll highlight that it's at the bottom. And it was directly at the absolute bottom of that curve in 2017. Now, what I want you to see is that since 2017, it's gone from the bottom to that little red circle, which says it still has not crossed the slope of enlightenment. Why? Normally with technology at Gartner, if you have something that's sitting down there at the absolute trough, you go, maybe this isn't working. Maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe we should abandon it. What I want to do for a second, if you guys don't mind, is I want to read what Robert and I wrote back in 2017 about resource management, because there are a couple of things that I think really underpin this discussion. Resource management done correctly will be transformative in IT productivity. It will also do much to change the perception of IT from a common service provider to a key and very important component of how things get done in organizations. For some organizations, this change in political roles might seem unacceptable. Some powerful individuals will no longer be able to get what they want when they want it because the needs of the organization as a whole will be placed first. I think there's a tremendous amount that's still coming from this. And Greg mentioned the chat window. Feel free to comment on this if this is not something you see. But I believe the tension between what we're investing in strategic initiatives and what we're investing in sustainment and the urgency that some business units bring towards this has kept us somewhat immobilized. That, I believe, is the background. So what we need to do is change the dialogue that we have with people. How do we do that? I think the first thing we need to do is change our language. 9 times out of 10, that's the solution to everything. When we talk in terms of what's most important to us versus what's most important to the people we need to influence, they don't really hear us. So I'm going to suggest that we look at what's most important to the CEO. So I've done some research, and 60+% of CEOs say their top priority is agility. How would you break agility down, and what would you expect to see? I believe, and we'll start at the left and go to the right, that the CEO is looking at resilience. No matter what happens, and COVID's been quite the ride, can my company survive? Can we adjust for whatever happens? Next becomes, and this is my phraseology, but we'll explain it, development of strategic tactics. How am I going to get the changes made that I feel are imperative to get my business successful? Very, very important. And that comes back to us, where the strategic tactics get executed through projects. So important, but it's in terms of execution. People are the vehicle by which we get work done. Now we get into portfolio management and work scheduling, which is where most of us live all of our time. But those are mechanical things. They don't speak to what we want. So we need to start saying, if you want resilience, if you want strategy, if you want people involved in their job, and I think everybody on this call is well aware that April started the Great Resignation. People have been quitting and voluntarily leaving their companies at higher rates since April than they have since the Bureau of Labor Statistics started tracking in the 1980s. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and we need to stand back, look at it, and probably not change our language internally, but change the dialogue we have with people outside of our direct community. I'm a big believer in very, very simple models, because probably my brain can't hold a lot. And I think we start with the assumption that resource management is the engine that drives strategy execution. And remember, it's strategy that actually creates resilience, the ability to move. Obviously, I am in no way minimizing that we need revenue, and sustainment is critically important. But there is a line in the sand that says, what am I going to spend there? And what am I going to spend over here? So where do we start with building a mental model that all of us can refer back to at all times, just by remembering this picture? People are the source of all creativity. They are what makes things happen. People in today's world need to be supported by technology. That's pretty black and white. And as far as I'm concerned, and we'll talk about it a little more, SaaS changed everything. Technology back at the dawn of time was wonderful but difficult to use. Now SaaS, much, much simpler. The design of anything you want is good, is so much better. People, technology, supporting, get work done. Work is measured in outcomes. And I want to stress that we as a community got massively sidetracked down the process road. We don't care if things are done on time. We don't care about outputs. We care about outcomes. If it doesn't move the needle, it's not what we want. And once we build the understanding that what we're doing should always be moving the needle, hopefully in a positive direction, the failure is allowed. This builds the culture that supports our people to continuously be creative. Simple mental model. Print out the slide, put it on your desk, redraw it however you think about it, but staying focused on the simplicity that people get successful work done, supported by the right technology, and they stay because of the right culture. You can spin this any way you want, and you still come up with these 4 factors. Okay. I'm going to admit we have a huge problem, and just as guilty as everybody else. See that picture? That little robot thingy? That's a resource. See the woman standing there? That's a human being. We have been sloppy about our language. I know how we got there. People have been hounding me for over 20 years to clean up my own language. It's very, very difficult. But when we say we're managing resources, that's a thing. That's a widget. That's a plug compatible something or other. That's not an individual. That's not us. Think about this. We're describing ourselves as resources. I don't think I'm a resource. This really is important. How we change our language, we're going to have to work on this because it's critical that we don't let anybody believe that we're not talking human beings. It's really important. And again, this comes right back to the Great Resignation. So, as a attempt to start moving things, I like the word people capability management, people capability, whatever. People, I don't care as long as it has the word people or humans in it somewhere. So I was talking to someone the other day, and it was a very interesting discussion. They had made the corporate decision to buy software to allow them to assign people to the right work, and they weren't using it. And the question was, why? The answer was, I don't know how to get it in. It's almost scary. It's not that the software is difficult. It's that the change management is difficult. I think if we focus first on people, and these are just various attributes, and break it down by maturity level, we can start to condition the way we look at things as saying, there's nothing wrong with level 1. I'm starting at the beginning. I don't need to go from 1 to 3 or 4 overnight. I just need to build the first things. With assignments, I need to know what people do. I need to know what they're available. All of that exists pretty universally in Excel spreadsheets. So in many ways, we're at level 1 if we're still using an Excel spreadsheet, but we're not at a standing start. So if we start looking at culture and people, and then anywhere we can, look at this, communities of practice, what can we improve skills and knowledge? Can we get better culture, teams, collaboration? It doesn't really matter. Whatever works uniquely in your organization to improve, just one little bit at a time. This really isn't a sprint. This is a marathon, and that's okay. It's really important not to try to do too much, try to oversell, and then stumble. It's better to pilot, win friends, influence people than bite off more than you can chew. So what is level 1? Where would I start? Level 1 is absolutely focused on changing the mental model. One, the human brain isn't good at multitasking. If you've read anything else or think you know you can multitask, yeah, no, not really. There's no scientific evidence. There are few people they found who can do multitasking. And I mean, we're talking less than 5%. Very, very few. And they literally have different brain wiring than the rest of us. So first thing we need to understand is that we've got to limit simultaneous assignments. Now, there's two things. There's simultaneous assignments to projects, simultaneous assignments to teams, simultaneous assignments to tasks. Be very focused on how much shifting a human being has to do to go from one piece of work to another, because that's what I mean by simultaneous assignments. Bottom line, never any more than 3. And please hear what I'm saying. Some jobs you can do lots of. I'm talking anything that takes a cognitive load, writing code, writing papers, doing research, finding out why there's a problem. Anything that takes a cognitive load, you preferably would assign somebody to it full time till they get done, and then they're free to do something else. You can split somebody in 2 as long as you very carefully allow for time to decompress from one and begin another. But 3 is the absolute number, and I routinely talk to organizations that are doing 5. Again, first rule, never confuse the urgent with the important. I have been, when I was a Gartner, obviously I took inquiries. I talked to so many people where everything was interrupted. No, we cannot tell you when that project will be done because we can't be sure we've got resources, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. That's a choice. Has anybody ever considered that? That is an organizational choice. And if we don't report back the outcome and the cost of that choice, then it looks like it's free. A lot of people are focusing on estimates of work. You're always going to get the wrong answer. 1,000 hours of work is the most meaningless number in the world, because if you start to factor it down, and I did, there's a blog that we can point you to that I wrote. It's about 1,700 hours of work. How does 1,000 hours get to 1,700? Because if you're going to try to meet a deadline, that's actually going to be assigned to 3 people. And 3 people always are slower than 1 person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of things where we're making decisions on data that's just wrong. Every project manager here understands the difference between work and duration. Duration will always reign supreme. Work is informative. It's never anything you can schedule without looking at duration. And now I'm going to bore a lot of boxes. In IT, utilization is only appropriate for robots and consultants. If somebody has 50% less unallocated, then just put them on the most important project they're already on for the rest of the time. If anything, they'll provide slack and things will get done faster. It's 15% of the time doesn't even exist with human beings. So again, it's the mental model we use. So the brain doesn't work the way we might have originally thought. Really sort of dull routine work, we could get bored out. We're not particularly effective. More challenging work, between something we're comfortable with doing and something that's we really have to think hard about, is work we enjoy. It's got pressure, but we're getting positive feedback. We could do that about 3 hours a day, folks, total. That's not 8 hours. That's 3 hours. Okay. That's reality. Some work doesn't take that intense a concentration, but we need to understand their limits. As we push over that 3 hours a day, and you know and I know that it could be 3.5 with some people and it could be 2.5 with others. This is just general. All the quality of work starts going down. As we do more and more demands on people to try to work at a 3-hour day productivity level, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, they get burnt out. 40% of employees, when I did this PowerPoint, were supposedly burned out. I'm now seeing numbers as high as 60%. Now, pick your number, it doesn't really matter. It's too high to sustain. Once we've accepted the mental model that the brain has limits and that we're doing silly things, now we can start to build a functional system. First thing, and I'm deliberately avoiding, portfolio management 101 here, is try to get management to simply set a number. I want 60% of my resources to go to sustainment. I want 40% to go to strategy. It could be 80-20. It doesn't matter. Just encourage them strongly to give you a basis for allocating. Doesn't matter what people work on. Once we have numbers, we can start to say, no, we could do this and we could do this, but we can't make things happen by magic. Don't come up with the best use of your resources. I wrote here in priority order. Priority order, when I use it, is not necessarily portfolio priority order. That's a long discussion, but optimize where, how, when people are assigned, who's assigned, because that I will absolutely put in writing that if you do this right, you increase productivity by 30%. Imagine getting 30% work done more in a year with happier people. I'm ready to sign up for that, and all it takes is discipline. I'm a firm believer in communities of practice because that lets human beings reinforce other human beings to keep the culture you're building. And then you've got to start with FTEs and major skill types and bottleneck resources and fix that. So there's a lot. Level 2 takes a while. You don't magically wave a wand and go from one level to another. So, but again, if you've got the mental model and you do things very clearly saying, here are the dividing lines, you've got to have rules of the road at level 2. And then, quite frankly, you need a system that will give you the flexibility to make changes. I am in no way ever saying that the CEO doesn't say to the CIO, well, today we're going to do this. I used to work in finance and we rearranged everything in one weekend. I'm familiar with that. That happens. We need tools to help us do it because we will have to do it, but we still will be reasonable about what's the outcome. Hint, this is hard work, not minimizing it. I picked that graphic to convey it. We've got to make sure that people know we care. I've talked to a lot of people and that's not obvious. And what keeps people from not quitting? My work motivates me. That means you can't just assign them tasks because completing a task feels really awful. Completing work that contributes to an outcome that your company values feels really good. So we've got to concentrate on work. Human beings like working with other human beings that they can talk to, that they can share things with, that they can run things by. Sometimes I think even though we talk, especially in Agile, with fixed teams, I don't know how much team there really is. Team has a meaning. These are people I can trust to have my back. So these are all cultural things that make the other things, because remember, we have our 4, work better. At level 3, you're now at the right named resource. You actually are getting exactly the right person on the project at the right time. I'm a huge believer in the concepts behind lean portfolio management with SAFe. The portfolio should be looked at every quarter. You should always be saying what is valuable, what is not. There are always things. I have never been, in the time I was with Gartner, I was never in an organization meeting with the head of a PMO where there weren't projects that should have been canceled a long time ago. I've never seen it. There is time, there are things there that are wasting time that will never pay off. And at level 3, we just stop doing them. We give people a lot more freedom to solve the problems they see. And this is important, at level 3, we start ensuring that people are interacting directly with the resource management system. So people have gone from being cogs in the wheel at level 2 to being in charge of the wheels. At level 4, things are very different because at this point, you've unlocked people's natural entrepreneurial urges. And a lot of the reason people are quitting is because they're going to go start up their own business so they can be in charge. Well, entrepreneurship works fine. We just have to recognize that these are real human beings who can make a better system. I picked that graphic. Look at that graphic. In many ways, that conveys what happens at level 4. You have people defining how will things mesh. Simple little things from an assignment basis. Let people bid on work assignments that interest them. Allow them to plan their learning. Make it clear what they can do that fits with the goals of the company. To accomplish this, we've got to get out of the chaos that most of us are in right now. I don't know how many of you have heard of internal talent markets. It's all the rage in HR. I think this is a fantastic move in the right direction because we don't necessarily have to have things rigid. You know, that's a holdover again from the factory line. If you spend just a second thinking about how much of our lives are unconsciously dominated by factory line mentality, it's probably going to shock you. What is resource management? It's a fact, as most people practice it. It's a perspective that we just put people places. You know, one person is the same as the other. That's not what the tools do, which is what I love. They give you the ability to get the right person to the right work at the right time. Excel won't do that for you. More advanced tools that incorporate portfolio, that incorporate program management, that give you the interconnections, that have skills, capabilities. All of a sudden, that's not factory line. And that's what's so critically important is we could break the back of the old industrial revolution model. And we're right at a moment in time where, yeah, COVID makes things suck, but it's made so much suck that we can make change. So on the plus side, there's so much we can do, and I'm really excited about it. We just have to make the right decisions. I came up with the idea for this chart, and mine looked horrible, but we have a fantastic graphics team here at Prosymmetry. And this is what they drew for me. Technology supports culture. I can't stress enough. Look at this picture. The technology you choose reinforces the culture you want. Just as I said, Excel inadvertently keeps you locked in a factory mentality. The right technology with all sorts of capabilities allows you to free your people so that they and your organization can be the best it can be. So let's be clear. At level 1, Excel is exactly where we live. And I've been in conference rooms with people responsible for the Excel spreadsheets, and I couldn't do the work. My hat is off to anybody who keeps those spreadsheets up to date and works so hard to keep the system moving. I don't think you can ever get the results you want. No, it's not that I don't think, I absolutely know. Because you can't see the big picture. Is Excel better than nothing? Absolutely, positively. But I think we've reached a maturity level where Excel really is the lowest level. So we're not talking about setting up spreadsheets. We're talking about the fact that we need to move beyond Excel because spreadsheets just don't scale and they're not suited for solving the problems we have in today's work environment. Level 2, resource capacity. So all of this was originally put together that we had one person who was going to effectively, I put him in a car, drive to an assignment, do the assignment, and drive back. And it was fairly clear cut. Well, then the traffic jam hit. And all of a sudden, it's not one person. Excel works fine, probably below 30 people. We don't have one car. We have a massive traffic jam with lots and lots and lots of changes. And this is what life looks like. So we need tools that are going to let that poor little driver in the red car keep pace with traffic. And I believe that that's an integrated solution that helps us make the right investment decisions, that helps us articulate outcomes, that helps us define what priority and in what sequence work should be done so that we can make the right decisions about where the human beings who work with us can make the greatest contribution. That's the goal. Level 2 is the struggle while you get there. At level 3, it should be all over but the shouting. But as I've had a chance to see, when we get the bugs worked out of the system, we still have a couple of mental models. Want to draw your attention to primary purpose. Level 3 is about sequencing the work. Turns out that we prioritize work, but prioritizing work is informational. Sequencing the work is actually how we optimize how work gets done. I was chatting with a friend in Australia last night, and we both got talking about the same thing, going, but people aren't doing it. They don't understand it. They just don't understand how work sequence. And that's really the level 3, because now we know our people. Now we know what our people can do. Now we have started to articulate outcomes. We know we should be talking in something that is measurable and tangible. Fluffy stuff doesn't count because you can't deliver it. So now we start saying, you may have something prioritized 1 through 10. We can only do 7 things, but I can guarantee you the right decision is not to start work on 1 through 7. It might be 1, 2, 3, 8, and 5-6. I don't know. It's totally unique for every organization. But that can be done through understanding the outcomes, knowing where your risks are, knowing what your deliverables are. There are models we can build that start to inform our decision. This is what level 3 does. And with solutions like Tempus resources, what if modeling, it's so easy to do. You can really say, well, what if I put this, and these are the people I have assigned, or these are the FTEs I have assigned. Where do I run into bottlenecks? What does it look like? So you're not trying, this is impossible at scale to carry in your mind. So you've got to have a tool to do this. But again, it's the sequencing that gets the work done on time to deliver the ultimate outcome. It is not the prioritization. At level 4, and I so wish I could say do this at level 3, but I think that's a bridge too far. This is all about putting people directly in charge of their skills, their competencies, their personal development, what work they want to do. And that means we have to break that information out of the HR firewall. There's a lot of reasons that HR has it behind the firewall, so I'm not trying to minimize that. And there's stuff that I would not recommend making fully available. But there's a ton of stuff that should be, that allows people to see and plan their careers and plan their education. And again, I've got stuff that I can offer anybody. And when I talk about this, I'm talking stuff you can do in an Excel spreadsheet. Believe it or not, there are still really wonderful things you can do with Excel. This is where you start creating the workforce that allows your company to outcompete all your competitors. It's not that hard, but you'll notice there are very few companies at level 4. When I was at Gartner, Lars and I wrote the maturity model, so I was deeply involved in it for quite a few years. I turned it over to Lars towards the end, but I could count on both hands the number of level 4 companies I ever talked to. People claimed they were. When I validated it, they were not. Level 4 was difficult, mostly because you have to be disciplined. You have to see what the advantage is of investing in your people. The level 4 companies that I talked to all had deeply embraced agility and had deeply embraced letting their people be all they could be. So with that, I'd like to recommend that you have a resource management. And yes, I'm using the word because at the moment, it's the only word we have. So we have a journey to go on, but let's all be sure we're talking about the same thing. Determine what level of maturity your organization is currently at. Not too hard to figure out. Your gut instinct is probably going to be pretty accurate. I've been trying to get a maturity model written here. I will eventually. You can call me. We can talk about it. I can still eyeball it based on the work I did at Gartner. Remediate any holdover problems from previous levels. No one ever moves 100% up the maturity curve without having things they do way better than anybody else and way worse than anybody else. Those are usually culturally centric, and some of them you can't fix, but see which one is really tripping you up, and if you're coming up a level, work on that first. So at level 1, build your culture. Make sure that people are important. Make sure you are encouraging people by your own words to think in terms of why are we doing this? What outcome do we expect? How long is it going to take? Process compliance gets you nowhere but more process. Everybody on this call is in the results business, and that's the culture you build at level 1. And if you build it at level 1, everything just flows from there. At level 2, you got to add technology. I know some people disagree with me, but in the 20 years I've been picking at this problem, the technology's there. It's easy to use. There's no reason not to add it at level 2. At level 3, I say focus on skills. That's me being wishful thinking. And at level 4, watch the outcome engine at work. Your organization can be absolutely amazing. And the funny thing is, this doesn't cost any more than what you're doing today. In fact, it saves money and increases everybody's happiness everywhere you turn, except for certain managers who want exactly what they want right now because their bonus is tied to it. So I haven't lost my grip on reality. But fundamentally, for the enterprise as a whole, this will deliver a lot more results than any other alternative. So thank you all very much. Greg, do we have any questions?
No, that's awesome. Yeah, we definitely had a couple of questions, and one that was very kind of timely. And I'm going to actually share my screen here real quick. Bear with me. All right. William had a question of, rather than resource management, use workforce management. And what's interesting, William, is we actually started using that. Here's Donna and Sean at a recent show we did in Las Vegas. And we actually started kind of rolling out that workforce, rather than the resource. So, awesome comment there. I think, like you said, it is the workforce. And a lot of times resources, like Donna said, feel like robots, interchangeable parts, and, what's a resource. So that was just a comment that he made there. Any other questions in the box here for Donna? For those that are on the line, I'm actually going to stay on the session for about 10 minutes. I'm going to do a little overview of Donna. I know she mentioned the what if analysis. I'm going to kind of quickly show you that if you're interested in seeing it, how it can be applied, maybe even if you're using Excel today, to give you some answers. So I will do that. We will have more detailed demos, and I will send you a copy of this presentation and the video later. But until that time, any questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A tab there. All right, I don't see any others. So with that, Donna, I know you weren't standing on the stage like I'm showing here, but I certainly appreciate, again, your words of wisdom there, and thank you for everything you've presented and everything you do here at Prosymmetry with us.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, so for those that want to kind of hang around for a little bit, as I said, my name is Greg Bailey, and I'm obviously not sitting here underneath the cabana doing this demo, even though I wish I was. Although Donna's heard that joke about a zillion times from me, so shit doesn't appeal to her anymore. But for wherever you are in the world, we all know things are going to get better, and we can imagine that. Again, as we were talking and that question came up, we've actually been out doing shows again. So we had a few in Vegas. I'll actually we'll be over in London over the next 3-4 weeks or whatever for a couple of new conferences. So at least things are opening up a little bit. That's pretty positive. So Donna talked a lot about resource planning and the maturity models and all that. And all that, I think, is absolutely wonderful. We've got to look at all that. But when push comes to shove today, many of you are probably either using Excel today, or maybe you're using some other tool to try and do this workforce management, resource capacity planning, or whatever. We have found that a lot of clients are trying to use these PPM tools, or in many cases using Excel. Just to know, we have a lot of clients we work with all over the world. Probably a lot of them are in the similar verticals to many of those on this audience here. A lot of times, I know many of you are either in the IT group, some of you are in engineering teams, some of you are in marketing teams, some of you maybe internal auditing teams. It's the same really everywhere. There are people, and people have to do work, right? Whatever kind of projects or products or whatever you're delivering on. So, what I wanted to show you is that one, we tend to be used quite a bit if someone is replacing Excel, or if you've got another system and you have no easy way to do what if analysis. And I'm just going to show you what that would look like. Now, to me, generally, when I do these demos, I always am thinking kind of the so what answer, like, well, so what? Well, think about this. What if you had an opportunity to be able to pull together all of the work you had going on, whether these are projects up here, whether these are products you're delivering. Obviously, we have a lot of work that's non-project work, right? BAU, keep the lights on and stuff. So, I'm kind of just in general talking about that, but having the ability to quickly look at where you might have some over allocation. So based on all the workload you've got out here, you can see where maybe you're going to be over allocated and you're going to have a problem, or where you've got open capacity. And whether you're looking at that by the roles in the organization or the skills, or you're looking at it by the department, or you're looking at it by the manager, this is all just leveraging user defined attributes. And you can also drill down into looking at a named person if you wanted to. So, whether or not Carolyn we're over allocating or not, what do we have Carolyn working on? Within this group here, I can see really we've got Abigail way over allocated. What do we have Abigail working on? Right? So again, giving us a quick view. Now, some of you I know probably coming up 2022, you're starting to look at headcount planning. So, hey, I've got all of this work coming in the pipe. Right now, you've got business units trying to prioritize that work, probably all trying to say, hey, I need this done. And then you've got to really take a strong look. And I mean, prioritization is great, but if you don't have the headcount available to deliver on this, none of this is going to get done. And obviously, immediately, things are going to start slipping, and immediately you're not going to be able to deliver on what the executives are requesting. So this has given me a view into saying, okay, if we do all this work here, and then also there's some new proposed work coming up I'll talk about, but you want to be able to kind of view and say, all right, well, here's where we're going to be short from an FTE perspective for this particular role or team or department. And even if you're doing agile work and you're assigning teams to work, you still, as we all know, people get pulled off that work to do other things. So, I mean, it'd be in a perfect world, it'd be awesome if we were 100% doing things in an agile format, some of you, but we all know that doesn't always operate that way. Now, the nice thing that you might want to be able to do is this is great. I can see I have a problem. Well, what do I do to fix that? Well, we're going to give you the ability to quickly do things like say, all right, well, I've got all this work going on. I'm short 2 bodies. I'm not going to be able to hire anymore. So, maybe let's look at this lower priority project and say, what if that slips out a little bit? And in real time, Tempus is going to show you the before and after implication, before and after of that project slipping out. So the whole idea is now giving you the ability to real time answer questions that you're getting asked. What if this slips? Show me the impact on my resources that are going to be addressed. So, again, we were over allocated here. We slip it out a little bit. Now we're going to be under allocated. It's a lower priority project. So that's good. We don't have to hire any more bodies to be able to do that. Another scenario that I see quite a bit is what if you've got all these new projects coming in the pipeline? And I know, again, you're going through this now. They're either asking you one of 2 questions in many cases. Let's say this particular project here, they come to you and say, hey, when can we slot this in? So based on the people that we currently have, based on all the current work that we're doing, can you tell me PMO or whoever you are that is in charge of this, when can we slot it in? Well, quickly you could ask Tempus. Tempus will come back and say, all right, I know what everybody's working on. I know what you got in the pipe. Let me come back and give you specific dates of when I find you could actually slot that work in. And it's first going to look for 100% of the resources available to be able to do that work. Now, you may come back and say, well, that's great, but it's a little bit too far out. Tempus, can you give me some additional options? I'm asking it for more options. It comes back and says, yes, I can give you more options. In fact, you can actually start it way back here. Now, you don't have 100% of what you need available. Specifically, you've requested these named people, and they're, already working on other stuff. They've only, Martha's only 98%, Emma's 98. Pippa's the one that's kind of booked the most. But you might want to know, well, do I have enough in general available? And so Tempus will come back and look from an aggregate perspective and say, well, I can find that, even though maybe Pippa's booked, I can give you another start date, right? I've got enough of, people in the PMO, my developers. So this will give you not only by the name person, but also generically. Because a lot of times when you're planning, as you know, this work, and especially for like 2022, you're not going to know who you're specifically going to put on it, but you're just going to plan by generic resources, or what we call demand planning. It's a demand that you're putting in, and it's more of a generic type of resource. And then again, eventually you'll replace that with the named person. The main thing I wanted to show you here is there are tools available. And if you think about today, for those of you that are using Excel, it's not easy to be able to answer these kind of questions. Questions such as, can we do this one sooner? I don't know. Let's see. Show me the impact if we do it sooner. Comes back and tells me all the resources impacted if we want to crash that schedule. Or what if someone says this is going to take longer than we thought? Show me the impact in real time of my resources that way. The other thing I'll occasionally see is that, you may have the case where, next fiscal year, you're going to do, let's just call it 5 more of those iterations or sprints or new products you want to launch. But again, you don't want to enter it anywhere. You just want to clone it and say, hey, what if I do 5 more of these? Maybe they're a little bigger. Maybe we're going to start about here. And again, from a what if perspective, you just want Tempus to come back and give you a quick answer of, if I do those, how is that going to impact my resource and current resource allocation that I've got available? So this would then just tell me, okay, you're going to need, additional headcount in the creative team or whatever it is, if you want to do 5 more of those. So again, in this real-time what if, gives us a lot of really powerful capability. There's a lot more available here. Looking at heat maps, cool maps, where I have open capacity, graphs, the grid view showing me the raw data. Again, there's a lot more here I can show you, and obviously feel free to reach out. We can set up a specific demo, and also we certainly do free trials as well. Now I'm going to take a quick look at the questions here. All right, I love that. I think all these questions here will probably be more for Donna. We'll have Donna follow up with some of you on some of these, because very good process discussions on questions. The other thing I just wanted to show you, kind of the last thing, is one of the biggest challenges that we see with many of the tools that people are using is, how do we make it simple, like Excel? And I'm just looking at a whole lot of projects here right now, whether I'm looking at it in sort of a kind of a table view, or I'm looking at it in more of a Kanban view. A lot of you are familiar with many of these views. But you might want to just quickly say, I've got to do a high-level resource plan. Obviously, I was doing a demonstration for one of the large companies that do cosmetics. I apologize for some of these project names. So, you're going to have the ability to quickly plan either generic resources or named people. You'll have the ability to plan either by hours, right? You can enter hours, or some of you do headcount FTE. I know I'm going to need 2 of these. I know I'm going to need maybe 3 down here. Some of you plan by percent of time. So I'm going to need Abigail for 50% of her time. And we give you the ability to do it just like you would Excel. So whether I'm planning by quarter or by month or by week or by day, or maybe even at the overall project level, you may not kind of specifically say, the project's this big. At this point, I don't want to actually have to spread the hours out. I'm just going to overall say, I know for a fact, I'm just going to need, 3, program managers on this. Probably doesn't make sense to have that many program managers, but you get the idea. So again, very much like Excel, very simple, drag and drop, copy paste, extremely easy to do. And all I have to do is plan at the project level. If you do have tasks, you can create tasks. If you did want to build a detailed Gantt chart, great, you can build a detailed Gantt chart, schedule out. But again, if you're using a Microsoft project or another tool, you can keep using those as well and just integrate that in with Tempus, which we give you that ability. So key things were just today, just showing you the scenario planning, the ability to do the easy entering of the data, and then kind of a little bit more. And again, I know Donna talked about, level 4, level 3, where do we populate this? We're seeing more and more organizations now where they may want to look at their employees, like in this case, Rachel. A lot of times you're capturing basic attributes. What role is Rachel? Is she full-time, part-time? What department is she in? What skills does she have? But you do have the ability now to start tracking a little bit more detailed skills matrices. So if you did want to track things, and these are all user defined, where, I want to know not just that, they've got to understand data analytics or infrastructure or product development. I want to know a little bit more detail. Like, are they proficient? Are they expert? Are they have a demonstrating knowledge of that? Or maybe it's just something as simple as, high, medium, and low. They understand the oil and gas business. They understand the water business. Another way that you can do it. Or some are getting a little bit more advanced where you might want to get into, hey, they're a level 2 at this skill, but they're a level 4 at this skill. Or, in some of the pharma companies, they're a level 5 in biostatistician, but in maybe assay development, they're a level 2. Again, nothing wrong with being different levels. It just gives you the ability when you're looking for your resources or you're looking for your people to assign. It's super easy to then be able to search for those and then know when they're available or when they're not available. And also when you're going to say, I've got to replace this project analyst here with a named person, right? So I need, if someone requested basically 2 project analysts, and so now you've got to find somebody that can do that work, right? So one, you might just want to look and say, well, who do I have available? Great, I can see I could give it to Ethan and Evan. But you might also, when you're looking for the resources, to be able to say, hey, are they a level 1 at this? Are they a level 5 at this? Do they have expertise in these particular research areas, biostatistician or whatever? Do they understand product development? So I wanted to just give you just that extra little, I don't want to call it even advanced stuff, because we have clients now where some of this stuff they just can't capture in their HR system, but we can pull a lot of it in from that. Or they're trying to even allow their employees to be able to go into the system and say, hey, here's an area that I would like to either get trained in, or hey, I have this experience that maybe you didn't know I had. Even though you hired me for this role, I can do all these other things. So it's a way to capture that knowledge too about the people and about the workforce. So when you're doing your planning and your resource replacing, it makes it super simple. Um, Last thing I'll show you, and I'm just going to show you this via PowerPoint real quick, is that in many cases, you're going to want to look at all kinds of dashboards and all kinds of reports and present that data out to different people. You know, we're going to give you the ability to have every single possible product graph and chart type you could possibly want. And I think the most powerful thing is being able to, you know, it's great to just have that data sitting there, but any of you that are using Excel or other tools, the most important thing is how do you make your life easier? One is, what if you could just auto deliver the data to people in the company? So, in other words, they don't have to come to you and say, hey, give me this report, or hey, give me this PowerPoint. You can set up whatever kind of dashboards you want in other whatever format and have that stuff be scheduled automatically to be sent to people. As well as the other thing that's important is, you know, don't just send me a report because I don't want to look at a report if everything's fine. Show me and create alerts. So I want to be notified maybe ahead of time before something's going to happen. Give me some predictive analytics, or allow me to set certain thresholds. So when we're breaching this threshold, I'm going to have an automated alert come to me with that specific dashboard or report or whatever I want to see, or I can send it to anybody in the company that may want to see that.